human beings. A workflow, if you want to spot it visually, whenever you see a platform that says that they allow you to build agents and then in the end you have to drag and drop nodes on a canvas, that's generally the indication that you're not talking about agents. You're talking about workflows with AI assistance, or what I like to call workflow AI aided. So essentially they are an enhancement of the existing workflows. There are some very good examples like with n8n, which I know for a fact can allow you to inject a node, which they call agent, which is very convenient from a marketing perspective, but essentially you would inject some of the generative AI components inside the workflow to make it look like you're doing something special, but you aren't. The second version is agents. So, and here is where the differences start becoming a bit more complicated to spot. So the definition of an agent is essentially an AI entity that can accomplish a task as opposed to just answering a question. Because if you just want a question to be answered, to be honest, you don't need an agent, you just need a large language model. So that's my easy definition, okay? So whenever you talk about tasks, to me, you start talking about agents. Then the problem is, how is the agent accomplishing that task and what kind of task can the agent accomplish? For example, if you want an agent to find information about your company that can be provided in terms of services that you give, the best practices to use your product, most likely you would have an LLM wrapped under an agentic framework of some sort that can retrieve data based on the user request or user query, and then provide information back to the customer. And have this conversational component, which means that the customer can then ask follow-up questions and then keep on providing answers. And as part of the process, for example, the customer could decide to say, okay, I want to speak to a human agent, or I want you to create a ticket. In that case, still, in my opinion, you would still consider that kind of use case agents. So essentially someone that, despite the fact that is not necessarily the most complicated use case that we know in AI exists, still accomplishes a task, doesn't just reply to questions, because it can create, for example, tickets, okay, or it can pass on the request to an actual human being. So you're moving away from the concept of just replying, you're taking an action, even if it's about delegation, okay? That's, to me, agent, which is what we have been doing in ToothFairy for the most part until mid last year. Then, mid last year, we introduced agentic tooling, which is the autonomous agents component. We've also worked obviously on orchestrator agents that spin up agents on the fly, but let's concentrate on agentic tooling. That's the autonomous agents component. So it's everything that I've said so far stays true. So the agent can accomplish the task that I was mentioning before. However, with autonomous agents, the agent decides to take what we call multi-turn actions, which means that an agent can decide on its own to run multiple tools, multiple requests to accomplish a task given by a user. The easy way to detect if you're talking to an autonomous agent as opposed to just an agent is the amount of time it takes. Because similar to a person that needs to figure out every single time how to do something, generally these agents don't give you quick answers. They plan, show you what they're about to do, take one step, verify the outcome of that step, decide what to do next, always keeping track of the overall task that you've given them. For instance, in ToothFairy, we use rolling horizon as technology to allow the agent to plan constantly. This characteristic is extremely useful when you want to deal with always different cases. So where you really want, I wouldn't call it a human-like intelligence, but something that can decide its path and decide its flow of reasoning autonomously, and you're willing to let it run for longer than 15 seconds so that you give an answer to a customer and allow the agent to explore all the tools that are available to accomplish, in many cases, at a higher value requirement.